Let's move on now and let's talk about what's happening within the defense sector, and who better than Mr. Rajesh Kumar Singh, the defense secretary himself, joining in on the show right now to talk about exactly that. Mr. Singh, thank you for joining in. Firstly, a note of gratitude for all Indians for keeping our borders safe and for helping us live freely without a doubt in our mind and making us so proud as a country.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
And, sir, especially because of the recent proceedings on the border and after Operation Sindoor, one is really beginning to try and understand the emphasis and the importance of India's defense sector. I wanted to understand what really is the big vision. Next 5 to 10 years, what is India's defense face going to look like?
Well, I think if I were to sort of encapsulate it in one word, it is Atmanirbharta or self-reliance combined with modernization of our capabilities. What you'll see, and you've seen over the last 10 years, is that our defense production in terms of domestic value of sales has grown by about 3 times. Our exports have grown 30x. A large number of new equipment, platforms, ammunition are increasingly being made in India. And if you see our defense modernization budget in particular, we are earmarking 75% of that budget for domestic manufacturing. So that combination of factors will ensure, in my view, that the defense sector will see sustained growth on the back of domestic industrialization, complemented by a small quantum of cutting-edge technology that we may have to import from outside.
Have numbers in terms of what is the defense allocation that we're looking at, say, in the next 5 years or even 2 years perhaps, and what could be the scalability of being an Atmanirbhar Bharat when it comes to the defense sector?
So the next year's budget is, I think the modernization budget alone, which is the capex, is about 1,80,000 crores. I mean, there are a couple of things I want to mention here. One is that, of course, you can expect India will be spending between $20 to $25 billion per annum for the next decade, if not more, on its modernization budget. In the last year, we spent about 1,60,000 odd crores, and the important thing was that we spend our budgetary outlays. Because for a long time, we've had this problem of actually having to surrender money because the procurement wasn't happening fast enough. Now, last year, for the first time in 5 years, we fully utilized our budget. More importantly, last year, we did contract signings of about 2 lakh crores. Now, the importance of that figure is that that is double whatever highest figure we achieved earlier. That was about 1 lakh crore in 23-24. Unless you have contract signings, unless the industry has visibility in terms of orders, down the line from the OEMs to the MSMEs to the smaller vendors, only then will you see the defense industry expand. And that is the visibility and the availability of contracts, particularly domestic contracts, that this ministry will ensure over the next few years.
So just to get the math right, tell me, how does the government actually balance and allocate the defense budget between, say, capital acquisitions, personnel costs, and also research and development and all the technological advancements that come along with it? Okay, we seem to have snapped that line. We'll just get back Mr. Singh in and try and understand more in terms of how the next pool of capital allocation is going to be done, how the breakup is going to be between capital acquisitions, personnel costs, and of course R&D, and where exactly, which stream of defense manufacturing will the government now be focusing in on. That in just a bit. But in the meantime, take a look at the markets, because things are getting quite wobbly there. What looked like it's going to be a very quiet start has taken a tumble quite a fair bit. We're now down about almost 83 odd points and getting a little volatile out there. While, of course, it is the Adani group of names which are weighing heavy on the markets, but there are also some benchmarks, or rather large caps like an Axis, like a Bharti, Unilever, Bajaj Finance. They're also weighing heavy on the indexes right now. But I think Mr. Singh is back with us. Mr. Singh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes.
What I was trying to ask before we got disconnected was, just to understand the math and how it really functions. How does the government really balance out or, try and bifurcate the allocation between, say, the capital acquisitions, personnel costs, research and development, and all the technology R&D which also goes into it?
Well, the short point is that the budget already does that earmarking, and that is why I was mentioning that we are looking at a fiscal envelope only for capex for modernization of between $20 to $25 billion for the next 10 years or so, perhaps a little more rather than a little less. The rest of our defense spending is obviously earmarked for personnel costs as well as for recurring costs, sustenance costs, maintenance, ammunition, things like that. But what I was really talking about is this $20 to $25 billion per annum earmarked for the capex for the modernization budget, which is critical to developing our capabilities when it comes to modern warfare.
This is Shrishti, and pleasure speaking with you, sir. But when it comes to the numbers that the government has set, we also have an ambitious target for export as well, which could be almost 17% of your overall production by 2029. And then it's Vision 2047, which states that India is willing to be the world's largest defense exporter. But help us understand in which areas within this defense space can India prove its prowess? Can India really be the leader when it comes to the export?
Right. So let me start by saying that India has already proved its mettle when it comes to certain types of platforms and equipments. Things like like artillery, like missiles, like Pinaka rocket launchers, like Dornier aircraft platforms, various kinds of ammunition. All of those are already being exported by Indian companies, including public sector companies, to over 80 countries. Now, in future, as I mentioned, on the back of sustained fiscal support by the government in terms of at least a double-digit growth in our capex outlays every year, we expect, and as I said, all of it or almost all of it being spent domestically, we will ensure that through our procurement process, through our buying power, we are able to leverage sufficient investment within the country, both from our own companies as well as from foreign OEMs, to ensure a sustained capacity expansion of the defense industrial ecosystem in the country. That ecosystem right now comprises some 16 public sector units, some 430 odd licensed industrial units, and about 16,000 MSMEs. Now those figures are set to grow based on the sustained fiscal support and buying that India is going to embark upon.
You see the role of private Indian companies evolving in the defense sector. And to add to that, what do you make of foreign direct investment beyond the current threshold, say, especially when it comes to technology intensive areas within defense?
So from day one, I've been saying that the government's policy is to provide a level playing field to the private sector when it comes to defense. You would have noticed that in the recent past, we've sort of walked the talk on that in terms of ensuring that in all of our tenders, the private sector gets a look in, whether it was AMCA recently, whether it was various types of ships earlier. In all of these tenders, we are ensuring that instead of giving these contracts on a nomination basis to the public sector, we intend to increasingly rely almost entirely on competitive bidding with equal opportunities for the private sector. That will ensure that the private sector gets a level playing field. The private sector also has significant ease of doing business issues when it comes to industrial licensing and licensing for both imported components and exports of their goods. On that area, the ministry under me will focus increasingly on ease of doing business issues to ensure that this licensing procedure also gets increasingly streamlined, rationalized, and makes it easier for the private sector to do business in India and also to get business in India.
New priority markets that India would be targeting when it comes to defense exports?
I think that is really an issue of geopolitics. You will not have permanent friends and enemies, so I wouldn't like to start talking about specific geographies. I think that's really something that will change over time. But what I would prefer to talk about is the platforms and the areas where we've managed to acquire good competencies. And as I mentioned, some of these include artillery, different types of missiles, increasingly perhaps air defense systems as well. So and various kinds of ammunition. So all of these areas are what we'll focus on. The actual markets will depend and will vary from time to time.
Sure. But within the avenues that you talked about, is there a particular focus that the ministry has in terms of where you want to up your defense capabilities and manufacturing prowess?
So I mentioned areas where we've acquired certain competencies. Equally, there are areas where we lack competencies. The absence of an indigenous jet engine is one of them. The absence of strong fighter aircraft manufacturing capabilities outside HAL is one of them. And those are the areas we are going to sort of focus on in the coming days. In terms of, as I mentioned, when it comes to AMCA, we are hoping to bring in the private sector as well. And in the area of when it comes to jet engines, which is a big gap for us, there also we are talking to different partners to ensure that we end up co-developing a truly indigenous jet engine for the country for its fighter fleet.
Earlier, the wars were fought with guns, artilleries and tanks, but now we see the technology upgradation and now it's drones that are taking and making into the battlefield. Give us some sense that what technology will define the battlefield of the future, if you can share your thoughts there.
I think areas like cyber warfare and you mentioned unmanned systems of different kinds, both underwater and in the skies, and perhaps ultimately even on land, will start coming in greater numbers. Armies will try to avoid sending personnel into harm's way and will rely increasingly on unmanned systems. And we saw a glimpse of that during Operation Sindoor as well. So yes, we will have to invest more in not only in terms of upping our drone capabilities, but also guarding against the enemy's drone capabilities by ensuring that we have better counter unmanned systems available in the country, that India gradually tries to expand its manufacturing ecosystem when it comes to military grade drones, which frankly is quite lacking in India at the moment. Unless we do that, we will not be prepared, but the government intends to focus on making India a drone superpower as well.
All right, and along with that, Mr. Singh, if you can give us some more sense that how do you see the startups and the private sector participating in the drone development, because that's the theme wherein for now we are seeing a lot of these public companies participating, but select companies within the private pack are doing well. But do you believe that from now there could be some more participation from the startup, and what actually the government is working with to support this ecosystem?
So let me start by saying that we do have important schemes like IDEX, where we try to support our startup ecosystem for developing prototypes and perhaps ultimately getting assured orders as well. When it comes to drones, frankly, there is no public sector capacity practically. Most of the capacity is in the startup and the private sector. And the intent is to develop that further by what India can do for them, or the government of India can do for them, is really provide them assured orders. Now, some of that will come in the near future in terms of new RFPs for different types of military-grade drones. But let me emphasize, however, that so far, the manufacturing ecosystem that has come up for drones in this country has not really, except for one or two players, does not really cover military-grade drones, which is why India does not have indigenous capacity for combat drones as of now. That is another fairly sort of large gap that we have, and we need to work on this along with the private sector and the startup ecosystem. As part of the response to Operation Sindoor, in fact, our armed forces are currently doing trials with different startups in the Babina trial ranges for what they have on offer right now in terms of both unmanned drones as well as loitering munitions. Those tests are going on, and let's hope some of those tests lead to orders for some of our drone manufacturers, particularly because we've also equipped our defense forces right now with emergency procurement powers. So if there are equipment that they feel meets their needs, I'm sure they would be able to get orders as well.
Before we let you go, what do you think is the biggest bottleneck when it comes to India's defense prowess right now? I know you talked about where we're falling short, but other than that, at a larger base.
At the institutional level, I would say that we need to work on ease of doing business. We need to ensure that the defense industry really suffers from the license permit Raj, and to some extent it cannot be avoided. You cannot produce lethal weaponry without having even a license. You can't delicense these sectors. But you can make it happen faster in terms of, when I was in DPIIT as secretary, we had increased the licensing period for these defense industries from a measly 3 years that used to be there earlier to about 15 years. A lot of other work needs to be done in terms of improving their ability to get their projects up and running quickly. Along with that, as I mentioned earlier, we have to ensure that our procurement processes give them an equal access when it comes to orders. That, as I said, I've already committed that we will be ensuring that nomination-based allocations of orders to the public sector will be a thing of the past. We'll increasingly go for competitive bidding across all platforms, even aerial platforms like AMCA, and these will hopefully ensure that the private sector really starts coming into its own when it comes to the defense industry in the country.
Singh, with this we let you go on that, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.